Hakan, nice to meet you
Yeah.
again.
Nice to meet you too.
And thanks so much for taking a few minutes for our podcast today. Before we delve into all things data, AI, and automotive, let's learn a little bit more about you as an individual and your professional journey first.
Sure, happy to. Well, my background is electronics, and I've done advanced technologies and products. We call it startup to scale up almost all my life. And even in the Air Force, 4 years, I was part of the Strategic Air Command. So my strategy relationship started early on, and then I was with Electronic Data Systems, and I was with Ford Motor Company 11 years, and then Panasonic 15 years. And then 2019, we started our own journey as H&K Ventures. H is Hakan, K is Kimberly, my life partner, and she's a director at Stanford University. She's focusing on her life mission as innovation for kids or creating education environment for kids. So in that sense, the AI, intelligence, and innovation has been our life journey together, both of us. Now we're based in Silicon Valley, and we do consulting, we do investments in various companies. Also, it's very global. Right now, the world is getting smaller. And I just want to also make a little bit of a disclaimer. On my background, you see Panasonic, you see Ford. These are the companies that I work with, but I'm not speaking for Panasonic. Just to put it, everything and anything I say here is part of HK Ventures' position and thinking. And sometimes I can also blend in my wife's thoughts too. She's not in this podcast, but she's also a good source for AI in education. Maybe we can talk about that later as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. To kick things off with a little bit of a broader question, if you think about the data of AI in the automotive and wider mobility industry, how would you describe this to someone who isn't necessarily so involved in the details as we are?
Sure. I mean, the data in mobility, and when we say mobility, it used to be car itself. And depending on the regions, car has a different role. Like in America, car is almost like your shoe. You have to have a shoe to go out. You have to have a car to go out. Unfortunately, we don't have a good public transportation system in many of our cities and rural area. So in that sense, the car and mobility and the data becomes very important. And when you look at the car as a vehicle, it has fleet vehicles, car rental, personal, many, many, many different segments. But when you look at in general, the data is almost, I don't like this, but some people say it, data is the new oil. I don't know what that
Mm.
means, but you hear it from people. So data is important, obviously. But from the data, what I want to focus on is from data, we extract information. From information, we need to extract actionable information, especially in automotive domain. One side is, of course, the OEMs, car manufacturers, what they do with this data. The second thing is, of course, let's say the companies like car rental, fleet owners, so on and so forth. And then the person in the car, actually in the car at that moment. So in that sense, the actionable information becomes very important. You can start from the traffic, obviously. Traffic is a problem. And then you can get into fuel prices, things, what you do in the car. And specifically in US, now we have in the car speech recognition and Alexa and Google, all these applications. And if somebody is looking for a search as a pizza, the chances are in US, you're going to buy a pizza. So it becomes also extension of the transaction or the drive-throughs. Right now, car also becomes part of the transaction piece. So it's very important how in automotive, when you connect live, it used to be people were very happy. They would leave the work and just say, in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, I'm going to have a quiet drive. I can go home and rest, but not anymore. In the car, we get calls. So in that sense,
Mm.
it's very dynamic. It's fast changing. Mobility is shifting as well. So I think we're in this different age now. The data mobility, in fact, auto mobility, we call it automotive and mobility, automobility. It becomes, together. So it's interesting times. Definitely. There's so much to talk.
You kind of alluded to this, that we're almost in a state of information overload, both as individuals and also as organizations. Do you feel like this might become, or potentially even is already, one of the big trends amongst individuals and organizations? to approach this age of information overload the right way?
Yeah, great question. I think we are, drowning in information, or in data, I should say. And the problem is our lives is segmented into silos, and each silo has its own data, its own information. It's all spread out. So who's bringing all together? And it falls into the individual or the company or let's say the car rental company or automotive OEM. But in that sense, when also look at the mobility, you have to look at the air travel, hotels, leisure, holidays, the whole thing. So in that sense, what we have is almost like data bombardment, especially when you are on internet. You get all these what they call personalized. You can call it advertisement. We call it infotisement. It's information advertisement, together. But at the end of the day, we ask people in Silicon Valley, what does that do to you as far as your life? And 71% of the people say the information they receive or the data that is extracted for them, that is too much, and only 25% is relevant to their lives. So you got this almost 70 something, 71, 78% data that is not relevant. And that's the noise we get. And of course, another thing is you do something, let's say clicking or whatever that is that you do on internet, and then things kick in and then you get more information. So it becomes very important who owns the data, who tracks who, and how do we manage this information flow that we don't really drown in it. And that's basically certain age segments that have a control on internet. And then you go back to kids, and you go to teenagers, and then you go to certain age groups, and you go to senior citizens. Then it becomes much, much, much more complicated. So we have to look at these questions as mobility in segments, age groups, regions, countries, and also some of the cultural things as well. So I think it's very important that how we look at this as a holistically, and then really put some boundaries so the lives of us are not really interrupted unnecessarily. And that's one thing. The second thing is third party using this information to almost take advantage of you, even to a point that you get misleading information, some transactions and so on and so forth. So then it becomes, as far as information, internet and mobility, almost like Wild West. So how do we bring all this together? I think that's our challenge.
Now, fascinating. Just on a sort of personal and professional level, I also notice from my day-to-day that I get notifications, emails, calls all day, every day. Do you have any sort of general principles that you apply in your personal or professional life that you would recommend individuals to follow to be more mindful and potentially focused, which can be quite important in certain areas of our life?
Right. So first of all, one piece, of course, when we say mobility, we cannot neglect the phone. Mobile phone is also a big part of it. So we don't accept any sales calls over the phone anymore. That's just, blank statement. If it's a sales call, we don't take it. Send us an email, send us the priority, what needs, and so on and so forth. So we basically push all the information, that data comes to us as we are mobile, into web and into weekends. I have, personally, one day, Saturday, I kind of push all this information to the folder and I go through them very quickly. So in that sense, you can get information that it looks like it's the San Francisco Police Department, something, and it has nothing to do with me. But sometimes these things push you to make an action, take an action at that moment. So we basically simply say, we don't do it, and nothing as far as on the go. So on the go decisions, unless you know the person or you know the entity. If you have a air travel from an airline, you get a message. That's a different thing. You're going to an airport. That's a time, space, place, which I want to talk about the connection. But if not, and problem now is on this connected world, anybody can reach out to anybody. So in Silicon Valley, we call it zero trust. So anybody that you don't know, you start from the zero trust. It used to be you would start from the full trust. You would go down slowly as you get more information. Now it's other way around. You basically have any kind of call, email, anything, unless somebody referred to you that you basically start from the zero trust, and then you find out more and you add more trust. So it's a little bit upside down. That's my, I guess, short guideline.
No, I love this. Also, I guess from personal anecdote, I feel like also this barrier of trusting people
Right,
has definitely increased over time.
right, right.
When we spoke earlier this week, you made a really interesting statement and said that you like to refer to AI not as AI necessarily, but as collective intelligence. Two questions there. First of all, what do you mean by that? For everyone who wasn't involved earlier this week, and then secondly, what does it mean for automotive and mobility companies?
Right, right. I mean, when I was in the Air Force, and then my thesis, I did speech recognition using neural nets. And this was 1990. Neural nets AI, nobody was talking about except Air Force. Now, when you look at these specific areas such as Air Force and neural nets, it was pattern recognition, and it was, trainable system that the input, the output, they have the hidden layers, input, output, so on and so forth. So in that sense, it was a problem to be solved. In that case, we were solving speech recognition as you talk and speaker identification, who you are, and so on and so forth. And then the AI last 4 years, 5 years, became into this basically, there's a heuristic data. When you look at ChatGPT, it's not real time, it's a little bit of a delay. So when you scan the internet, this whole web world, you extract information, and in that you create this intelligence. We call it's collective intelligence. And the reason we call it collective intelligence, and when I say we, I mean H&K Ventures, me and my wife Kimberly, because it sense kids also need to learn to get into collective intelligence. Car companies needs to get into collective intelligence. When you say artificial intelligence, people don't like the word anyway. Nobody likes artificial ingredients, right? I mean, I don't want anything artificial. So I think as humanity, we have this collective knowledge, and it's all on the past. And then some people say astrology, looking into even the future back and creating these patterns, which is, I respect, fine, okay. But at the end of the day, it's our collective intelligence. You and I come together last week. The collective intelligence, Dr. Fabian and Hakan, is also valuable. So that's why we want to focus on more collective activities rather than artificial intelligence. And I think as we do the collective intelligence, this is basically looking what has been done in the history of the world as we know, looking into internet, extracting information that is applicable to time, space, and place, and then creating actionable information out of that. To me, if that's not collective, what is collective? Now, artificial intelligence almost seems like something just out of this world. It's newly discovered. So in that sense, as far as philosophically, we like to use the term collective intelligence. So that's kind of a little bit of a quick update.
No, I love that. You alluded there twice to your triangle of time, space, and place as important components, as I understand, for innovation. First of all, what do you mean by time, space, and place, and then why it's so important to create innovations?
And Fabian, you're a doctor, so I want to go a little bit at the philosophical level. First of all, the world as we know, it's a fast changing place, right? We have all this information, our lives are segmented, but after COVID also, everything is blending to one another. And in the world, we have this duality, man, woman, day, night, poor, rich, good, bad, all these things. It's a duality. Now, in this complicated place, the most important thing that which we have no control is time. So if you can control time, you can control anything, but nobody can control time. So far in Silicon Valley, I haven't seen anybody that said we have a time space engine. We can shift the time. So that's one thing as far as time is so important. Is it in morning, afternoon, and is it holiday? Is it a time crunch? Whatever that is, that moment is so important. At the same time, the place is so important. Where are you? Are you in your house? Are you at work and all that? And at the same time, in this place, space is so important. In your house, for example, are you taking a bath, really comfortable, or are you watching something? So in that sense, we call it time, space, and place. That's the essence of AI. That's the essence of this collective intelligence that needs to come and connect with your life. And this is really true for kids. And when you give a child little tablet, they don't know time, space, and place. So in that sense, as an adult, you have to monitor that. You have to set that. At the same time, as a teenager, school, high school, exams, so on and so forth. And then as you go through the life, and as a senior citizen, it becomes more important. Where is time, space, and place? And that is also connected to your health. That's connected to your finances. That's connected to your mobility. That's connected to your collective intelligence. So our strategy is, how can we bring life to you as your life, applicable to you at the right time, space, and place? And that has to be an actionable information. I think that's what the thing is. Now, when you have actionable information, then the transaction comes. Sometimes people want to jump the transaction right away. Unless it's the right time, space, and place with an action and transaction, those all need to come together. So I think that's our challenge that sometimes people don't respect. If I get some internet, let's say, offer, it's not the right time for food, it doesn't make any sense. But if I'm in a car, as far as I'm driving by this fancy restaurant that I like, normally it's hard to get some reservation or whatever, even McDonald's, whatever that is, then it's the right time, space, and place. I can just go there, get this, and then continue my life. That's why time, space, and place is one of the, I would say, ingredients in life that is so important that we have to pay attention. And AI needs to be focusing on that for each person, each group. That's when it gets to be a little bit more interesting.
Thank you so much for bringing this to life, Hakan. Just a follow-up questions to that and bringing this into the context of, you kind of alluded to this, but more explicitly in the context of organizations. How can they operationalize this concept? Would you say that they ask some specific probing questions in this regard, or how can they make sure that their innovations, I guess, meet the right space, place, and time requirements?
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing is, I think, the trust. If you have the trust, whatever the car you drive, which car brand is so important, really. I mean, especially in US, sometimes people have 2, 3, even 4 cars, and they segment these cars based on the weekend or based on the work or whatever the length of the drive they have. If somebody's driving 45 minutes, maybe they want more different kind of car versus for the weekend. So in that sense, the space that you're in, the place that you're in, let's say such as car, if you have the trust, that becomes very interesting relationship, because now you are in a place that is moving, touching different places. And in that sense, the trust is there because that's your car. You spent, after buying a house, largest expense as far as buying a car. So in that sense, once you have the trust, or it could be sports teams. People love sports teams as well, or universities they graduated, or friends, dear friends, or some other brand. It could be even fashion brand or cosmetics, whatever that is. So in that sense, when you have the trust, then it becomes much more easy to get to this time, space, and place relationship with the person or families, or it could be anything and everything. And then, of course, it's different when you are Monday through Friday, you're driving versus you are in a holiday that is a special time. If I'm in UK, let's say I know you, you know that I'm coming to UK. At the same time, if I get anything from you, there's a trusted relationship. So I say, great, Dr. Fabian, thank you. This is so wonderful. I can do this if it's a time, space, place information. Or airline sends it to me, some information in that time frame. Airline knows I'm there. Or if I rented a car, that is the car that I have here, then it becomes more valuable. Now, this is when an automotive disconnect starts. If I'm driving a, let's say, brand A here, let's say I'm driving a Jaguar here. Now, when I go to England on my holiday, if Jaguar gives me a rental car option, if I have a Jaguar in England too, now that's an immediately trusted relationship, right? Maybe it's a new model. Maybe it's not the model that I have here. Maybe it's a SUV, whatever that is. Now you create this trust as a friend, as a car brand, or it could be hotel, whatever that is, that now time, space, place information becomes much more relevant. I pay attention. Otherwise, if I get something, anything from somebody, then I'm thinking, somebody's maybe tracking my phone. And that's not a good feeling. I'm in England, I'm in maybe BT or whatever the phone, Vodafone. but I don't like it because I'm like, I don't know this person. I don't know Vodafone. Just because I'm getting the service for Vodafone, and I'm just giving these as an examples, then it doesn't have this time, space, and place, trust, because that needs to be at the bottom, trust. The second layer is exclusivity. People want to feel exclusivity with these information mobility. They don't want that you send something goes to anybody and everybody, especially if there's a brand connection. Exclusivity becomes much more important. If I have a Jaguar, then I want more exclusivity. And it could be something that relates to football in England. I want to maybe go and see football game, or it could be some special scenic, maybe trip over the weekend. So that becomes much more relevant when you get these things connected. The other piece is when you look at somebody's life, there's a phone company. I'm just simplifying now. There's a car brand. There's a work. There's things we do as hobbies, and the brand relationship. The brand relationship, we call it your inner circle. What it means is my inner circle, these are the brands that I trust. My car, my airline, my hotel, my football team, so on and so forth. Now, unfortunately, these are all disconnected. Airline is not connected to car company is not connected to hotel. So that's where I think this AI, the data science, needs to get into collection of these verticals and creating a lifestyle for the person. And that's what we want, especially certain vehicles that when I buy it, I feel like my lifestyle is enhanced because of the brand relationship. I think that's where it becomes so important that as far as data scientists focusing on the person and the brand relationships and bringing all together as far as getting into this time, space, and place action and transaction.
A couple of areas I would like to dive a little bit deeper into. Let's maybe start with the data slash big data topic first. In the context of the automotive and mobility industries, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges as it relates to the underlying data, which, as I understand, really enable you to build some of these functionalities and then also the trust by handling the data the right way?
Well, great connection. I mean, we got stuck e-call, B-call, emergency call, breakdown call, and we do surveys in Silicon Valley. The telematics, as we know, very mechanical connection to a car company. People don't use it. They don't reactivate it. I mean, some brands maybe more, some brands less. But the point is, the automotive company internally, when you look at the diagnostics, when you look at the maintenance, that group is in a silo itself. And then there's outside the vehicle activities groups now in some car companies. They want to get into outside the car connectivity. And then, of course, dealership service and so on and so forth. These are all, I think, I don't want to say segmented in some car companies, but mostly they're segmented in silos. So how do you bring all these different car company entities within a car company that has this data access, and how you collect all this, together into one unified solution that is a collective intelligence? That's, I think, goes back to you. I think that's where I was so excited talking to you last week. Your holistic approach is very valuable, and I think it's rare. I mean, really, the credit to you. That kind of unified, as far as holistic approach in a car company, is so valuable. And mostly in car companies looking back, they collect data, but also in that moment, the data, again, time, space, and place, that's also very important too. So I think, like you, some of the scientists getting into this real-time now data collection, extracting information, and bringing into action. I think that's what is so important. So far, most of the car companies, they're looking into heuristic data, existing data, and then they will say something which is okay, but it's not really adding value to the person. The other piece, leveraging the brand. I mean, I'll give it another example again. The Jaguar. The Jaguar is a lifestyle brand, and in that sense, it's so important that you expand the brand as Jaguar into lifestyle. And that means a lot of things. If let's say certain model as Jaguar SUV going into, let's say, by water. It could be lake, it could be sea. Now you can extract this person's doing something with water sports, right? So in that sense, that connection is so valuable because the car location is giving us lots of intelligence what this person's lifestyle is. If it's always parked into, let's say, Chinese, let's say restaurant, now I can say there's a little bit of a affiliation. Plus, the car company knows the person. If the vehicle is financed or leased through Jaguar, you got that intelligence as well. So in that sense, that's what I was excited talking to you, looking into this holistic approach that it can get into lifestyle. And now buying a certain vehicle becomes much more life enhancing opportunity. So first, within a car company, you need to bring in. The second thing is in car companies, we need more data scientists like you looking into this as a holistic approach.
It seems like trust is quite central there, and I've observed many debates, especially recently, more and more about who individuals and organizations are trusting with their data, and almost seeing trust data, so data privacy and trust as a potential competitive advantage moving forward. What would be your sort of 10,000 foot view and guidance for senior executives in terms of how to maximize the trust, and linking this back to the initial statement about we're in sort of a zero trust environment where it's arguably getting harder and harder to build and maintain trust over time?
Yeah, a great connection, question, and it's really connected to our earlier conversations. When you look at the person as an individual, they have a background as far as the culture, the language, the region, the car type, city, location. It's very dynamic, right? And then they have these brand circle that they're really tied to. Now, today, all these brand circles we have as a relationship on internet or any place else, password and ID, password and ID, password and ID. So people are tired of password and IDs. And Apple, Google now, they want to collect all the password and IDs you have. But again, there's a little bit of a trust issue. Do I trust Google to give all my password and IDs? And we did a focus group long time ago, and it was so clear people did not trust Facebook, Google, because they were thinking they're using my data. Now it's not secret anymore. Initially, when it's free, you are the product thing is everybody knows it. So in that sense, the key is when you look at as far as the list of things in your life, for example, school you graduate is way at the top that people trust. And then it becomes more like sports teams, which is kind of interesting. And again, these changes for some people. And then you go through the car brand, and then you go through this local affiliations. If you're an engineer, data scientist, PhD, so on and so forth, it just goes on. Now, in that sense, it's so important, first of all, not to abuse this, trust. If you're a car company, if you're trying to deliver time, space, and place information, you have to be 100% sure, as close as possible, that you deliver this information at the right time. The only way you can do this also to get into other relationships, like car companies needs to know airline, travel information. And we have now companies in Silicon Valley, in Florida, which we are talking to. They are into this travel space. They basically have all these connections. And in fact, I would like you to meet some of them that you and I talked about this, because these companies come from the travel point of view. They come from the city information point of view. They're very global. And what they want is this catchy brand. So it could be car company XYZ. And well, we use the Jaguar. It could be the Jaguar car, let's say. And that's a perfect fit for these, travel entities. It's basically a platform. It's a mobile app. It's on the internet. So then what you do is, based on the entry point, somebody buying a car, somebody flying, somebody staying at the hotel, or somebody using a travel app, you expand this, trust gently. And people see it, there's a value for them. You also expand it at the times of certain special events. It could be Christmas. It could be Thanksgiving. It could be the Boxing Day, whatever that is. And at the same time, imagine as I'm buying a car in US, a lot of people finance it, a lot of people lease it. So there's a lot of financial information we as a buyer or leaser give it to the car company. I will love, I mean, they know my birthday anyway. I will love to get something from them special on my birthday, right? It could be an excursion of, let's say, a hotel, maybe for the weekend, and I get on my Jaguar, I stay one night, maybe one night, or maybe lodging is free, I pay for drinks, something like that. But it builds this trust, it builds a relationship. And then what happens is, in the family, if there's something, of course, that introduction to that hotel or whatever that place is through Jaguar builds the trust. And if it's a chain, then of course it's global. That trust expands global. So I think organically, based on the event, and it takes time, I think car companies in a very good position to build the trust dynamically in a personalized way, and so on and so forth. So this is from the car maker's side. This is from the hotel airline side. But we also, as H&K Ventures, we have a project going from the bottom. Now, the going from the bottom project focuses on the person. So as Hakan, for me, instead of having password and ID, I have my own gateway. When I come to internet, I come to this gateway. In this gateway, I put my connections, all my brands. At one time, I put password and ID, password and ID, password. Now, when I come to my internet site, it's my internet. Anything that I go into internet as a content, pictures, content of anything, location, it's all tied into my own gateway. So I own what it is on the internet. So if something happens, when I move on to another world, I leave behind my life in internet to the family. So the family could see what kind of life did he live. So in that sense, today, we all have our lives basically scattered on Facebook, Google, it's all different places. I mean, if we had this relationship, how could you find out what Hakan did on the internet? It's so difficult. But if I have a one gateway, then you have all this information. That's one thing I'd like to talk to you more, how we can bring this in a world such as visionary scientists like you, because I think that's from the people side that we can also look into, not from the top down, but also from the people side.
That's fascinating. It leads me very nicely to my next question, which you've alluded to here and there, which is a little bit more closely related to use cases for AI and potentially even Gen AI in the automotive and mobility context. You, if I remember correctly, have done quite a bit of work on autonomous vehicles or related to autonomous driving in the past. And it felt like one of these innovations that's always been at least 5 years away. And currently, I guess we're still in loads of areas of the world quite far away from achieving sort of the level 4, level 5 of autonomous driving. I would be really curious to get your perspective on advanced AI and Gen AI use cases in automotive and mobility. What are some of these use cases that you can think of that you would recommend some of these executives to think of? And then secondly, and this relates me to the autonomous driving analogy, what would be your, I guess, critical, realistic perspective on when some of these use cases actually come to life over the next coming years?
Right, another good question. So I would say this, first of all, I don't understand, let's say Google Waymo or Amazon or other companies are all collecting data individually, and we almost created this race, car companies also, as in autonomous vehicle, intelligence, data collection world. So first of all, look at avionics. When you have two giants, Boeing and Airbus or Embraer, other companies, they don't have a better algorithm for automatic landing. There's also regulation, right? So we know when I fly this airline or that airline, this aircraft, that aircraft, it's basically safety level is same. There's a standard, there's a regulation. So in that sense, I don't want to live in the world that if I buy this car, they have a better autonomous L5 algorithm sensors versus this car doesn't have any of this fancy algorithms, because at the end of the day, this car is on the road, this car is on the road. So eventually, if they don't have the same intelligence, same AI, something is going to happen. This has to be regulated. So that's number one. So I think these entities, companies need to collaborate. So that's very important. As of today, everybody's going their own way, collecting data, and they're touting we have this many million miles. It does not matter. At the end of the day, if it's going to get into reality, it has to be regulated, it has to be certified. So they all have this equal safety layer. Otherwise, as a consumer, I don't like it. In San Francisco, we have way more cars, crashing at the intersection just by, I mean, these cars crash. And then we have, unfortunately, homeless people attacking these cars. So the homeless people think these automated vehicles are taking their jobs. So it's a very interesting dynamic that they see this. These are the people that, whatever the reasons, they're homeless. In America, we have a problem. Now they see this new autonomous vehicle, autonomous taxi, as a disrupting thing to their lives. So we have this social pushback as well. Now, let's forget all that. Look into use cases and where we are, so on and so forth. First of all, the infrastructure. If you install, let's say, sensors in the world, you can have a safer environment for L4, L5, whatever that is. But that's not possible. I mean, there's some cities in NEOM and so on and so forth. People think they could do this, but we're not there yet. So the road infrastructure, lines, and all that is very, very early on. So at the same time, that's why we call microlocation. Focus on microlocation. What is a use case for microlocation? Let's say around the airport. Airport is a microlocation, or downtown, let's say the city. Now, in an airport, I will love to get out of my flight, go at the gate, wait for my car, rental car, come and pick me up, autonomous. I don't have to go to car rental place. I don't have to do this check-in. It knows me and so on and so forth. Now, that's a low speed, maybe 20, 30 miles, and it's a known area. So to me, microlocation makes a lot of sense. Or at the event. And again, I'll say this too. When I come back, I leave the car at the gate. I don't have to go to car rental. I basically jump off. I go to my flight. Car goes back, parks itself. To me, that's the ideal case. At the same time, as you know now, we have a lot of deliveries, logistics. So small microlocation in the city, small vehicles, they could be autonomous. That makes sense too. And at the same time, in big events, how many times we waited to park our car, whether it's a football game or concert, whatever that is. I would love to get my car in a line, and then 1,000, 10,000 cars, whatever that is, event, let the car park itself, and then come back and pick the car up at the same place. So these kind of micro-location applications, to me, is a big deal. At the same time, we have now companies from Finland, which is kind of interesting, not Silicon Valley, Finland. And this one company, and I'm going to give the name because it's very unique. They need recognition. Company called Unique, that's their name. They do these Ro-Ro vehicles, Volkswagen, it's public knowledge. The cars from these ships unload themselves. And this is a big deal because otherwise you have to have a driver, get into the ship, drive it back, get back, drive it back. It's very intense. And at the same time, when you have a, let's say, autonomous vehicle, L3, L4, now the cars can park close to one another. You don't have to have this door and so on and so forth. So this company also doing now in literally factories. End of line, normally, people drive it and park out in the lot. So it's all done automatically and you can collect data. So these are so important. Another thing is, let's say sometimes people do testing. When you do testing, the driving habits for the tester, it used to be that we had these at Ford special people, they would test the cars, they have these special ears. They would see if there's a problem, but they drive differently. So you have an autonomous vehicle. If you want to do diagnostics, testing of the vehicle, you can drive the vehicle autonomously. The beauty of that is it's a same driving habit. How you increase the speed, slow down, put the brakes. So now you have a data which is collective and it's really homogeneous. It's same. You can compare apples and apples for diagnostics. So we have many use cases like this. And of course, the trucking, big trucking is another one too in highways. We have some roads specifically in US and Australia, straight, right? You can fall asleep as you drive. But in England, you can't do that. So in that sense, use case basis, things do different. But I would say in the short term, micro location is very important. The other piece is, of course, safety. Now, A lot of these things now, as phones, pagers, could be used as a weapon. Look what happened in the Middle East. So the car could be a weapon too. So we've Hollywood movies on this. So that's another thing too, that as far as a car controlled remotely, it has to be done in some cases so that if you see any abnormal behavior, you should be able to direct the car, pull aside. So that's another, as far as autonomous vehicle too, that you should be able to get this. The doors are locked, person cannot get out. And then at the end of the day, the person cannot use the car as a weapon. Well, I mean, people are not talking about this, but we said 5 years ago, the phones, pagers, tablets could be used as a weapon. No, everybody said, no, I don't think so. And look what happened. Now they're saying, oh, it's an interesting thing. So connectivity, mobility, AI, bringing all these things together.
Fascinating. Final question from my side, and synthesizing lots of the areas we've spoken about. Imagine that you're talking to a chief data and AI officer at one of the large incumbent automotive and or mobility companies. What would be your top three plus minus one recommendations for this chief exec?
My recommendation to chief executives would be right now, data is everything. So the data scientists in the company, it used to be the accountants. It used to be the inventory people. It used to be the salespeople. Depending where you are, certain companies give priority to certain people. In a Japanese company, salespeople had so much power because the customer was important. And then with Ford, when I was at Ford, it was more like manufacturing and so on and so forth. I think right now, data scientist is the entity, almost like back in the days, 1970s, 80s, industrial engineers. We had mechanical, we had electrical, and then we had this new, I think it was like maybe 80s, industrial engineer. They were looking at this whole thing. Now it's the data scientist. I think the companies need to empower their data scientists that could be able to go in. And most of the time, I know it, I can speak for the fact, a lot of people hide data. There's one application that data is there as far as recorded, and there's another one is data even is not recorded. It's basically based on the people. And especially now we have this aging group, and unfortunately, the young workforce does not have all the skill set for various reasons. A big problem in these companies also, how do you get this collective data from the experienced workforce? That's a big one too. In addition to that, as far as the sales, manufacturing, design, engineering, all these entities, plus the customer and after sales, and then second life of the vehicle, that's another one too. Nobody talks about second life of the vehicle. The car companies think the first buyer is important, and then the car is used car, secondhand, nobody cares. The connection is lost. So that's why the data scientists, that's what I was impressed by you. Your questions a week ago when we talked, it was a fresh approach. It was not like I need more power to do things. It was more like, how can we holistically get this information and add value to a car company, to a society, end user, and also bring in safety and security as far as sustainability, as far as saving energy, the carbon impact, all these things. And that's what I think we need, people more like you, Fabian. So I think it's all on you.
And that means a lot. And yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. It's been an early start for you that you made time for this and shared your incredibly valuable and open and honest perspectives.
Sure. It was a pleasure. More to come.